Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'm going to be looking at a few books that I got. So this is more of like a publisher overview of some books I got from Breakdown Press, which is a small UK publisher. The reason I got these is Matt Battaglia, who's joined us for a number of episodes, was telling me that he thought I'd really like Connor Steckschulte, I think is, I don't know, I'm terrible at pronouncing names, but he's telling me that he thought I would like Generous Bosom. And when I was at their website, I thought I saw a lot of other stuff that looked cool. A lot more stuff than what I could buy. Some of it's out of print, but I figured I'd sample what Breakdown Press has to offer and found a lot of stuff I really liked. So I'll just go through all the books that I ordered. Some of them I really like, some of them I was so-so on. The first one is Fukushima Devilfish by Katsu Susumo. This is a Ryan Holmberg translation. Ryan Holmberg's also doing the translation on a lot of the stuff that Drawn in Quarterly is releasing, like the Yoshihiro Suge books. So he's obviously very interested in the Garo magazine and doing collections of the Garo magazine artists and bringing them in translations to the United States. And like, thank goodness for that project. This is as good as the Yoshihiro Suge books, similar thing, where it's a bunch of short stories. The first two stories, I don't read the essay in the back, but I glanced at it. The first two stories, I guess, are atypical of the artist, and they're about people working in nuclear power plants. I thought that was going to be the theme of the whole book, since the first two stories are that way, but not so. But some really intense scenes, where people are suffering from working at the plant. Amazing art, similar to the rest of the stuff that I've seen from this kind of group of guys, the Yoshihiro Suge, the really nice rubbery calligraphic inking on the characters, cartooning on the characters with the really intensely detailed backgrounds. This is the second of the two nuclear power plant stories. And, just some really amazing art in there. This one had a particularly intense scene where the character had a head wound and was bleeding, but couldn't be brought out to the hospital until they'd been verified that they didn't have too much radiation in them. Something that I really like about this book is instead of being printed in black, it's printed in this like kind of dark ultramarine-ish color. And that just adds something to the quality of it that I really like. I don't know if that's how this was originally printed or why that decision was made, but I quite like it. The print quality is great. They must have access to the original art. There's even some tones in here that doesn't look to me like dot tones. They're just like really, really smooth all the way throughout. I can't see any dots in there. There are other ones where you see that he was using gray tones, but I'm curious about what process was used for those tones. So really lovely printing on this book. The middle section of this book is more of these stories with like little monsters. This is the Kappa Monster. I particularly like this scene where they give him something to eat and he stuffs it in his belly button. Like Suge, a lot of very beautiful nature scenes and just really impeccable compositions. So you get a sense of the art. Another cute little story about an animal making a best friend. They're all short stories. They all feel very contemporary to me as well. Compositions like that are just so good, just killer compositions. Some more of these just masterful nature scenes, like in the Suge books. And then, yeah, the stories feel contemporary. They're short. They're kind of odd. These ones are more mystical, slice of life. They all have like a nice little poetic wrap up. It feels like something that Drawn in Quarterly would be publishing in one of their contemporary short story publications. Really great caricature, like cartooning throughout. Lost edges that I really like. It reminds me of like how Bastien Vives drops lines out of his artwork. These big empty white spots. So these are things I'm probably going to be stealing from. And then just some of the other character stuff feels really contemporary to me. So just some examples of before. Oh, here's the other one. This feels like a really contemporary, like Boom Studios or something type of cartooning there. And then again, like a face with no eyes or nose or mouth. That looks like a Bastien Vives. So a really, really amazing artist, someone I've never heard of before. And I hope there's a whole bunch more Katsumata, Susumo things that are going to be translated, because I'm a fan and I'll be grabbing more of that. So really happy about Breakdown Press printing that. This one is Yokoyama Yuichi, another manga artist, and I believe this is another Ryan Holmberg headed translation. This one's totally silent. Again, pretty good print quality. All the stuff up front is really nice and crisp, and the stuff in back looks like it has a tone over it. It's like speckly, but the artist in the back talks about doing everything with pen and ink. So I'm not exact, and that they stay away from a computer, like they don't even own a computer. So some of it looks like it's done digitally to me, but according to the artist interview with Ryan Holmberg in the back, that's not the case. But this is such a cool and strange book. Like it's got 3 short stories in it, but they feel so long. It's this thing that I'm starting to see in manga about them decompressing stories applied to a short story. And because it's short, what they decompress is like such an instant, like this. And then the images are so abstract and they're so noisy. Even there's no one talking. There's just these sound effects like all over the, I don't know how they did that without a computer, but there's the sound effects just all over the place becoming part of the abstract composition. So this first story is just like some guy in a spaceship shooting through a yard. It looks like a little guy shooting through a yard. This second one, I have no idea what went on. Like, it looked like they were going to prepare, like all these people getting in cars preparing for a race. And then it turned into like a watermill or something. I have no idea, but to me these stories are about the visuals. It's like a bunch of abstract designs that are interested in motion and composition and rhythm, musical in that sense. And then the third story is the artist, and this is what I think the artist does a lot of, is just pick a moment and then stretch that moment out for a very long time. So basically people just setting up a camp and then just zooming in on the cool different like abstract aspects of people setting up camp. And then this particular camp is a little funny. They have like this paste, so it's futuristic. They have like this paste that they pour on it and it oozes down and turns into like this thin plastic sheet that then becomes the dome for the tent. So just the fact that there's like 3 pages spent on the paste dripping down and solidifying, but staying formally and visually compelling all the way throughout, to me is really impressive. So this is another artist that I've never heard of before, but I'm quite excited by them. I think normally a book like this, that's like, oh well, you just drew someone setting up camp, like what the hell. The style of it and the compositions really had me excited. So that was a cool one. I got Palace Number 1 by Antoine Koss. Antoine Koss is someone that they've printed a lot of their work, and I think Fantagraphics has a book coming out by Antoine Koss. I really like the art style and the compositions in general. This is one where I felt like the stories were just, I didn't get why someone would make a story. Not a big fan of these big like sketchbook pages. But this more ink wash stuff is lovely. So this one's like a guy trying to break out of prison, and some dogs are supposed to bark to let his crew know when to go get him, and the dogs don't bark, and that's kind of it. But the drawing, the illustration in it is really quite lovely. There's someone it reminds me of, I guess kind of Bastien Vives this reminds me of as well. But there's really open calligraphic lines. Some stories like this that I don't know, I just didn't get. But I also quite like when the artist works in color. The one story that did stick out to me was the final one, which is in color, more in color, and it's of a photographer setting up to take pictures of these women, and one of them slips and he happens to snap the photograph at the wrong moment when everyone's like coming up out of the water, and not in the best position. And I don't know, it says to be continued. So I'm assuming that if I go back, I think there's a few more of these that story would be continued. But I'm not super convinced that I would buy more of Antoine Koss's work. This story I'd like, and I would like to see the rest of. But I really, just the rest of it wasn't for me. The print quality is pretty good on it. It works real well in color. It's kind of like on a newsprint type of paper, and they're definitely half toning the images because of the washes, so the lines get half toned, and you can see the little dots. The lines aren't as crisp as they could be, and then some of these blow ups look a little funky to me. So that wasn't my favorite one out of the bunch. We just did the episode with Matt Canning, and he had us look at the Pycnoleptica Inertia, which I just happened to order right before he said he wanted to look at that. So you can go watch a whole episode flipping through this one. Really good print quality on this one. This book by Lando, Gardens of Glass, which is the partner of the artist who did Pycnoleptic Inertia. Very similar vibe. This kind of mix between Moebius and Otomo. I really like the art. Similar thing where there's mostly silent. One of these stories has words in it, and it was actually distressing for me that the characters talked because the whole rest of the book was silent. But a bunch of short stories. Really cool art. My problem with this was, and I don't know if this was because the rest of the breakdown press stuff that I've seen is really well printed. So I don't know if this was the problem of the artist delivering bad files or just earlier on in their career as a publisher. But all of the work in here is half-toned, which doesn't seem necessary to me because the grays are already like a duotone dot pattern. Feels like it could have been done digitally on a different layer and preserve the line art crisp, but I can see without even sticking my face up in it, I can see each one of these lines being constructed out of dots. And given how delicate the line work is throughout, it was really disruptive for me. I think they were doing that just because there's some of these digital like captures of texture that are put in there. I have no idea how this book was made, but it looks like it was drawn in pen and then scanned and toned later, maybe, or maybe even toned physically. So it just seems like whether it was the artist or breakdown press, they should have known that they could put this on another layer and half tone that and preserve the line work. So that was a bit disruptive, but really like the art. Really, it has that same mysterious vibe as the Pycnoleptic Inertia. And then the series of books that got me to breakdown press, thanks to Matt Battaglia, was Connor Stexculti, Generous Bosom. This I believe was printed with risograph, I believe, and it's done in like spot colors, which is really cool. So this first part one, this is all, there's 4 of them that tell one continuous story. Part 1 is one of the best comics I've read in a long time. It was like, this is what I want out of comics. It feels like like something Louis C.K. might have written, not his humor stuff, but I think particularly episode 3 of his show Horace and Pete, where it's just one conversation that's very dramatic and uncomfortable adult interactions talking about very serious things. I don't want to give away the story at all, but that's kind of the vibe of this book. And I quite like the use of 2 different colors, which has a really important formal reason that's connected to the story, the switching of colors, and also just like the rain coming down and dissolving. It feels very filmic type of thing to pull off in comics. And that's what Matt showed me this first page. Said, oh, you got to check this out. And then it goes into these guys kind of catching up, and the one guy tells a story, and then the rest of the book is that story. But again, the dissolve of the rain. So I really don't want to give away the story there, but there's some other instances where you can see kind of like Dash Shaw looking stuff where there'll be a color covering the whole thing and an image in the background. But I've never understood what Dash Shaw is doing when he does that usually. In this book, I totally get it. And here's like the 2 characters talking in the one color, and then this color is like what he's talking about. this first issue, like I said, is one of the best written, best cartoon, most interesting adult dramatic books I've read. And I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. It seemed like a complete story in and of itself until the last page. It was like, uh-oh, it's going to keep going. So then there's a second book. And book 2 was still pretty good. It had a lot of same adult drama in it. A lot of just really intense, dramatic conversations. This cool color thing that's used to kind of represent interior states and memory. Some really, as Sean's new catchphrase, as we've determined, is well observed. So well observed moments of just characters shifting their legs or picking at their fingernails, and so, you know, picking a hangnail, which was so viscerally uncomfortable to me. Just, yeah, really well observed, amazing cartooning. And then starting to get more, starting to realize that the story is not what you think it is here, where these characters, like, they're not able to remember people's faces, and the art, you know, really represents those states very well. Some more of this double printed color where a character's remembering being somewhere and they're remembering what they're holding, and that's mapping onto where they're at currently and starting to get mixed up. You know, again, I don't really want to give away what the story is. And then these moments here where the characters, in my mind, kind of experiencing dissociation from a traumatic event. And so she's like outside of herself from a traumatic sexual event, and seeing herself dissociated in the mirror or the TV represented by the different colors. At the end of this volume, all of a sudden the twist hits, the real twist hits, and I really, really loathed the story of the second 2 books. Beautiful production, beautiful artwork still. You know, scenes like this that are really beautiful. Some interesting things that go on as memory fades and it introduces like a mind control element that is kind of a sci-fi element all of a sudden into what was otherwise a drama for me, with erased and replaced word balloons. I thought that was a very cool formal trick. So this third volume was okay, but I was really unhappy with the story. Art still amazing. Still have those kind of, going back to that picking the hangnail. By the time it got to part 4, again, great art. A lot of the formalisms weren't really popping as much for me. There is still stuff going on that's still in service of the story, but the story takes a turn into just like a weird X-Files sci-fi government conspiracy theory thing. The best comparison I could make of this book as a series is, if you've seen the movie Hereditary, the same, I think it's Ari Aster that did Hereditary and Midsommar. My impression of Hereditary was that the first half of that movie was this amazingly nuanced, just most uncomfortable, painful, familial drama I've ever seen, and then halfway through the movie it takes a shift into really cliched horror film tropes and totally undoes itself, and has like this thing where the people have been playing a trick on the main character all along, and just absolutely undoes everything that movie set up in the first half. That's what happens in this book too. All of this wonderful adult drama, and then it just takes a left turn into just tacky sci-fi X-Files conspiracy theory bullshit. I think that was the plan all along. I don't think this is a writer that didn't know where to go and like came up with, you know, some way to finish the story that was absurd. There's things seeded all the way back into part 1 that shows me that the artist had a plan of where they were going. I just, personally, it wasn't for me. I think maybe that trickiness of the overall plot in the artist's mind was there from the beginning, and maybe put a veil over like what was the actual successes. So I'm really fascinated by Connor Stickschulti, however the last name is pronounced, as an artist and a writer. Very powerful artist, very powerful writer. I hope whatever he does next, he realizes the strengths of his ability to tell just a down-to-earth dramatic story, and that it doesn't have to have this weird twist ending. So I would definitely recommend buy number 1 and just don't read the last page. Number 2 maybe, but I can't recommend the story in the other ones. But in terms of Breakdown's Press's job of production and everything, these are really, really gorgeous books. All right. Thanks for following along. Definitely go to Breakdown Press. They have a bunch of other variety of things that I haven't even showed here, and overall really quality books. So give them the look. Order some things for them. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.